Alright, so Andor Season 1 has now come to a close, giving us one heck of an explosive conclusion. And in this video, we're going to be discussing the ins and outs of this episode, our predictions for what Season 2 has in store, along with our general thoughts of this series as a whole. Anyway, thank you for clicking this video. Now let's get into Andor Episode 12.
I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness. It is never more alive than when we sleep.
First off, though, we gotta talk about something that you might have missed if you didn't stick around through the credits. Yes, unlike the previous episodes, this finale actually ends with a huge reveal in a post-credit scene, as we see none other than the Death Star being constructed. This is something week in and week out we had kind of theorized was being built, or at least components of it were being built by the prisoners on Narkina 5. As we see it being assembled, similar to the ending of Revenge of the Sith. We get confirmation that the items that Andor and his work crew buddies were piecing together actually helped to assemble the dish section of the Death Star. As we know, the Death Star plays massively into Rogue One as it's the main threat, and the entire film revolves around Andor and Jyn Erso stealing the plans for it. Ironically enough, Andor is killed by the laser from its firing, meaning that he helped to assemble the very thing that would kill him. It is interesting to see the progress of the build over the 14-ish years between a Revenge of the Sith and Andor. Here it's almost complete with only the dish, and I'm assuming the multiple kyber crystals being left. However, with the prison breaks, labor and parts slowed down, causing the completion of the dish to take roughly 5 years to finally insert into the Death Star. Man, I'm so glad the Empire knows the struggle of taking 5 years to get it in. Now because of the events of Rogue One, we know the Death Star will not be operational until much later in the Star Wars timeline, and Andor won't really be aware of it until that film. He does discover that the Empire is building a planet-killing weapon of some kind, but he doesn't know the ins and outs of it. This means Andor won't find out about the Death Star in Season 2, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any of the other characters can't. Luthen is, of course, a major part of the series, and for being such a pivotal figure in the Rebellion's infancy, there's only really one reason he wouldn't be around for the events of Rogue One.
He's dead.
Unfortunately, I think Luthen is going to die in the next season, and this could be a result of him learning of the Death Star. This would tie in with the opening of Rogue One, as we see him passing along the info about the defective pilot to Daniel May's character of Tivik. Tivik could then head out to Kafrene to meet with Andor, which could then be a way to end Season 2, similarly mirroring how Rogue One butts right up against the events of A New Hope. Either way, I don't think Luthen is making it out of this alive, and this would explain why such a prominent member of the Rebellion isn't anywhere to be seen in the rest of the Star Wars timeline. Unless Disney wants to special edition Rogue One CGI Luthen into scenes. I mean, that would be awful, but hey, we've seen worse. He's of course masquerading as an antiquities dealer on Coruscant, and hey, it's even possible that he could end up blowing his own cover in order to buy time for Mon Mothma to escape, knowing all too well she plays a bigger role in the grander rebellion than he does. Unlike him, she is in the rest of the saga, and she's openly helping the rebellion instead of hiding away. So I'm guessing she gets exposed by Davos Skulden, and due to her closeness to Luthen, she could end up accidentally exposing him too. We're going to talk about it more in the rest of the video, but if you're a simp Ariel like Cyril, then please hit that thumbs up button and make sure to subscribe to join the Jared Rebellion against the evil Emperor Palpatine. Hey, join, we got some fruit snacks. Now, the Death Star is a big way to close out this season, but how did we get there? Well, for the next part of the video, I want to talk about the build-up to that cliffhanger and also go over the directions that we might see the start of Season 2 going with Luthen. Huge spoiler alert, but we found out that Luthen is actually this kid from the Jedi Temple. I'm just messing with you, but how insane would that be? He's aged horribly, but Luthen doesn't kill Andor. Surprise, surprise. The whole episode had been all of these various parties flocking to Ferrix to tie up the loose end of Cassian. Though the end, when Luthen is given the opportunity to kill him, he doesn't because he sees the fight in him. And the line from Andor says so much about where we know his journey takes him.
Kill me. Or take me in.
Andor has lost everything. He has nowhere to go. Either he's going to fight the Empire with everything he has got, or just, end it right there. There is no point in living. We know he goes with the Prior, which does lead to his eventual death, but that doesn't stop him from becoming a notable member in the rebel cause. Luthen, seeing Andor has the same spirit he possesses, matching the incredible speech from Episode 10 with Lonnie. Luthen smiles, knowing his hunch regarding Andor all the way back in Episode 3 was right. So not only in a way does Andor now have a purpose to live, but Luthen is no longer this lonely person, having given everything up. The two have each other and a shared goal now. The series being titled Andor is fitting because sure, we know Cassian goes on with these grander things, but Marva, even after her death, was still fighting. She was another spark that helped rally the people of Ferrix to stand up against the Empire with the help of B. Ferrix, along with the word of Narkina 5, are no doubt spreading, rallying others for the cause. With a handful of them hopping on board a transport ship, escaping only shows me that a couple of them will probably end up in Season 2, having been seasoned, no longer sleeping, but fighting even harder against the Empire. This also shows how scared and unprepared the Empire is with people actually standing up against them. The troopers, but more importantly, Miro, unexpectedly distraught by the events that transpired. Lastly, Mothma appears to be going along with the Davos Skaldron meeting, despite her own judgment. She did, however, cleverly create an excuse earlier in the episode concerning the missing money, blaming her husband with his gambling problems. The Imperial driver spy passed along this information to Blevin, who appears to have been behind the whole surveillance operation against Mothma from the beginning. Being the politician she is, this was a clever because not only has she kind of created this fake excuse with the gambling winnings, but also moved forward with the Skaldron arrangement. This allows her to take the money from him, cover her tracks, but if she is caught, then she's easily able to blame her husband and Skaldron, allowing for the eyes to finally be taken off of her. Man, what a plan. As her daughter, though, I don't think that there's any way around her not having them wed. Lita being adamant about Chandrilan tradition and against anything her mother wants, so her union with Skaldron's son feels inevitable. Now, where does Season 2 of Andor go is the million-dollar question. Originally, Tony Gilroy and crew had Andor mapped out to 5 seasons, with each of these seasons covering a year before the events of Rogue One. However, things were kind of condensed from 5 seasons down to 2, with Season 1 roughly taking place in the year of BBY5, or 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. That means that Season 2 has about 4 years of the Star Wars timeline it can cover. Gilroy continued in an interview stating that Season 1 was developed in blocks of 3 episodes, and that Season 2 would follow the same 3-block structure, with each block covering a different year. Time jumps, folks. Where we're going, wait, that's the wrong franchise. Hyperspeed. We're going hyperspace to the future. This can allow for us to see characters taking on major events in a couple of days or maybe even weeks, and then jumping a whole year as we see them as a completely different character. Like they have seen some The next 4 years aren't necessarily about the rebellion, they're about learning to be a leader and how difficult it is to put an alliance together and what happens to these people who are the original gangsters versus the establishment and a lot of different issues. Gilroy continues stating that roughly 30-some characters are being carried forward to Season 2, and the second half of the series is about what does time do to these people. People grow and people get tired, people betray one another, people change their minds, people get weak, and people go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So all of this combined with the time jumps could see someone desperately on board with the rebel cause in episode, 3? Only to see them siding with the Empire a year later in episode 4. As for who or what is going to show up are only theories, but no doubt fan favorite K2SO. Motion captured and voiced by Alan Tudyk, will be introduced as the lovable, reprogrammed Imperial security droid we know from Rogue One. He could show up after one of the time jump sections, or even get an actual meeting and reprogramming of him by Cassian and the twins of Rizmor and Curtis on Wikuku. Who's naming these planets? Like we mentioned earlier, Luthen plays a big role in the rebellion's beginnings, but his absence in any of the films almost guarantees he's gonna die. The amount of time, energy, money, life he has given to the cause ties back to the emotional speech in Episode 10, and his sacrifice honestly might be for Mothma, covering for her, knowing all too well that she has more leadership qualities than he. A key moment for Mothma will be the public challenge of the Emperor and the Empire over the Gorman massacre. Back in Episode 6, Mothma mentions the peaceful protest of Gorman having a knee on their neck over basic rights. However, her efforts failed, resulting in the massacre, which saw Imperial troopers killing hundreds of peaceful protesters. I believe this happens in BBY2, so it's gotta be included because this is what drives Mothma on the path of becoming a public figure standing against the Empire, later resigning from the Senate, and becoming the prominent member of the rebellion we know, working with several characters featured in Rebels. Leaving her family behind because Davos Skaldrin and her husband have definitely tainted her daughter. Speaking of Rebels, yeah, almost all of these characters are fair game to make their live action appearance. You get a cameo and you get a cameo. Everyone gets a cameo. Nah, it won't be a cameo fest of an MCU movie, but rather the key members that are operating in the rebellion kind of makes sense for them to show up. Hera, who ends up becoming a high-ranking member in the rebellion, seems like a safe bet, along with some of her maybe associates. I'm banking on Sabine, but honestly, it could be the whole crew. As for the Imperial side of things, Brawny Thrawny is no doubt going to make an appearance. This time in the Star Wars timeline begs him to be a destructive force for the Empire and tasked with tracking down rebel activity, which he is obviously very, very good at. Not only would it be a great way to introduce this blue man to a wider audience, but even could be the person that Surreal ends up reporting to. Surreal and Miro seem to be going on the path of Imperial power couple, performing the old trench run in the bedroom, but the thirst for power is going to drive Surreal up the ranks. While I'm theorizing the opposite is going to see Miro distancing herself from the Empire. The traumatic fieldwork on Ferrix shows her firsthand what the Empire is capable of, and this rattles her loose from the Empire's hold. Now, some final thoughts on Season 2 includes either a name drop or maybe an appearance by Krennic, who becomes the head of the Death Star project, and Galen Erso at least passing along the Death Star information to Bodhi Rook. With Gilroy getting into the grittiness of everything, this could even make for one of the 3-episode kind of block arcs. And lastly, Jimmy Smits, Bail Organa, baby, he's gonna be back, don't you worry, along with Tarkin being the thorn in Krennic's side that we kind of see in Rogue One. Oh yeah, and Yavin 4 will no doubt be the base of operations in the later half of the season. This plays a large role and would be foolish not to include in some capacity. Like I said earlier, the final moments will no doubt lead directly to the opening of Rogue One, much like Rogue One did to A New Hope. I'm hoping Season 2 will be the same caliber as Season 1. Part of me did really want 5 seasons of this, each tackling one single year. I mean, give me the nitty-gritty of the rebellion as it's building down to every single minute detail. But hey, I'm not going to complain about anything in Andor because it was fantastic. But what do you think? What Star Wars characters do you hope might show up in Season 2? And why is it an old grizzled Cal Kestis? Surprisingly, the chatter I've seen online about Andor, well, unfortunately it's not much, which is a shame because this series is by far the most interesting, well-crafted, serious take on Star Wars since the property was bought up by the mouse monopoly. Heck, I even think this is the best thing since the original trilogy. Star Wars doesn't have to be just for kids, Andor being the more mature example of this, that with great talent in front and behind the camera, less lightsaber action, more character development, and less reliance on CGI, we can explore these new planets and characters and relationships without popping in a squibble beep cameo for people to scream, "Let's go!" It's the tension and drama in these relationships that have elevated every single episode leading to this finale. And I am so much more invested in Andor and Kino Loy escaping a state-of-the-art prison than, say, Boba Fett teaching sand people how to ride speeders. Tony Gilroy perfectly introduced so many new characters with all of their storylines weaving perfectly together. There isn't a single through line that feels terribly weak compared to the others. And the synth, space opera, Blade Runner-esque score from Bertel bred new life into what Star Wars has been known to be. Less reliance on the old and nostalgia. It almost worked too well here. Are we still doing numbers with these review sections? Yeah, we are? Okay, well, Misa gonna give Andor a solid 9.5 out of 10. All around fantastic season. It blew away my expectations and easily climbed up there with my love for Rogue One. I would say the only nitpick is that the first 3 episodes need to be watched together as almost one big movie. Watching one doesn't necessarily have the same impact and honestly kinda is a slow start. But man, every episode, I'm telling you, every single episode gets better and better, which is almost impossible. Tony Gilroy and crew should be ecstatic about what they created, and I cannot wait for what Season 2 has in store. But obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Episode 12 of Andor, that post-credit scene, and do you think that this is the best thing that Disney has done with the Star Wars property? And I'll let you know, we're currently running a competition right now, giving away 3 copies of House of Dragon Season 1 on the 15th of December. And all you have to do to get a chance of winning this is like this video, subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below on your thoughts of Andor Episode 12. We pick the comments at random at the end of the month, and the winners of last month are on screen right now. So if that's you, message us on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, be sure to check out some of our other cool videos like our Loki Season 2 leaked trailer breakdown. With that out of your way, thanks for your constant support. I've been Jared, and remember, Andor is awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and peace.